Hello, and welcome to Let My People Eat, a podcast that provides satisfying talk about kosher nutrition. Here we clear through the clutter of nutrition speak, arm you with the clarity and confidence to eat, feel, and be your healthiest every day. I am Jill Scharfman, a board-certified holistic nutritionist living in Los Angeles.
And I'm Dr. Andrea Moskowitz, a neuroscientist and psychiatrist in Los Angeles. I use my training and experience to integrate positive lifestyle changes into my patients' lives.
Hey, Andrea.
Hey, Jill. How's it going?
It's going well. Yontif is over now.
Yes, it's all over.
It's all over. We're back in the studio. So I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you get hangry?
Not too much. I think I used to before I was more aware of the role my diet played with that, and made sure that I had a consistent intake throughout the day and good protein levels and things like that. So.
Yeah. So I do. If I miss a meal or I don't eat for a while, I get very irritable and I feel much better after I eat something. Sure. So I try and be very conscious of this.
Right.
So this is really about balancing blood sugar. But there are also, the more serious form of that would be diabetes.
Correct.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about both today.
Sure.
But first, I want to introduce our guest. With over 8 years of food blogging under her belt, a successful Jewish food media business conference in its 7-year planning, and the Kavana podcast, and over 1,000 lives changed through her health coaching practice, Melinda Strauss is pursuing the dream that came along unexpectedly. What began as a food blogging hobby has turned into thousands of lives being touched every single day by her motivational messages and personal experiences with her own growth. Melinda is a wife and mom of 2 living in New York with her dog, Louie. Hey, Melinda.
Hey, Melinda.
Hey.
How are you?
So nice to be here.
Yeah, welcome to Let My People Eat.
Right.
So Angie and I started talking about blood sugar, and I know that you are type 1 diabetic. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you found out, how old you were, what your story is there.
Yeah, my story's a little crazy. I'm going to just preface, and I'll ask you a couple questions along the way because I like to play a few games with my own story.
Okay.
So it was 2001. Just a few months, actually, I was living in New York for the first time as a freshman in college, living on my own in New York City. I went to Stern College. So New York City was our campus. And I can tell you now that I had tons of symptoms, but at the time I didn't even know that type 1 diabetes or any diabetes existed. And it wasn't really talked about, and we didn't learn about it in school. I had lost, over the course of around 4 months, 30 pounds. I was sleeping all day and night, but of course, again, freshman in college, so kind of just goes with the territory. I was drinking so much water and so much juice that I literally couldn't stop drinking because I was thirsty all the time. And the TMI, I was peeing a lot. That's always a fun one to talk about, but just was constantly, but all those things kind of made sense, right? I'm drinking all the time, so I'm peeing all the time. I'm losing weight, but I'm still young. I'm growing. I'm a freshman in college, and I could literally eat my face off. Like, I just loved eating so much food. I would drink Frappuccinos every morning. And you look back now and are like, how am I not dead with the way that I used to eat? I have stories of nights that I went out and had just so much food. It was unimaginable. And it was one weekend I was by my sister, and I remember before I left her house for the weekend, I was eating a bagel, of course, a bagel. And my mouth was so dry that I couldn't even, I had literally had to drink in order to get the bagel down. And I went back to my dorm room, and I started getting a little twitch in my eye, and called my uncle. He's an eye doctor, and he's like, oh, it's probably stress. Freshman year of college. Can't say it enough. And it just started kind of moving from my eye down to my mouth. And I was like, it was twitching is really the right way of putting it. Found out later these were seizures, but it was in my mouth. I remember I tried to drink some tea because I was like, calm down, Mel. If you're stressed, tea's going to help you. And I couldn't get my mouth around the cup or even around a straw without twitching. And my poor mother, all the way across the country in Seattle, I kept calling her, and I'm like, am I okay? What's wrong? And she called one of my sisters. I have 2 sisters who were both living in New York at the time. One of them was actually at an interview and left the interview because she kept getting phone calls from my mom. It's like, I think this might be important. came to my dorm to find me locked in the bathroom with my face in the sink, trying to calm myself down. And she's like, Mel, you got to come with me to the hospital. Like, she was like, if you don't come, I'm calling Hatsala and everyone in your dorm is going to know what's going on. Got into the elevator with her. I remember I had a pink Ralph Lauren towel, these certain memories you keep, right?
Right.
On my face the whole time because I couldn't stop twitching from the neck up. And we took a cab to NYU Hospital, had a very interesting experience there. They were not very nice about, it was Christmas Eve, by the way.
Oh, wow.
They were not very nice. Yeah. We just keep piling it on. And they weren't so great about their customer service with someone coming in. I had a wet towel. I put it on the woman's paperwork. Oh, she was not happy. They did a whole bunch of tests and went to my sisters and like got really angry. How did you not tell us she has diabetes?
Oh, wow.
And my sisters are like, huh? What? What is that? And it was just from one of the many, many tests they were doing, trying to figure out why this girl is a walking, talking seizure.
Wow.
I walked into the hospital, answered all their questions, and literally put up my finger when I was having a seizure, like, hold on, give me a moment. I was so polite and had my seizure and then went back to answering their questions. So that was how I found out. But here's the fun part. I want you to guess what you think my sugar was when I was diagnosed.
I'll let
Go
Andrea
high.
take that.
Go high.
Yeah.
800?
Keep going.
Oh my God.
1,000?
So it was 1,040.
Whoa.
Okay, let's talk.
You're lucky you were like, could
Alive.
string
Yeah.
2 words together or one word
That's
together.
unbelievable. And I was able to
Yeah.
walk into that hospital. And a lot of people I hear now, like they get sick when they first, they'll get into the 300-400s and they get the flu or they get sick or something happens. I made it 4 months. 4
Wow.
months and 30 pounds. And because I always think, it was great. I was so tiny. And at the time, it was one of those goals of mine was to be so skinny. And so it was really fun to see it happening. But I didn't realize that my body was just rejecting anything I put into my body.
Let's just for perspective, Andrea, what is the normal level? Someone who doesn't have diabetes or hypoglycemia,
Right.
let's say what would their normal blood level be?
Okay, so there's 2 ways we look at blood sugars. So there's fasting and then non-fasting. So generally speaking, like when you go get a lab test done or whatever, they want to do fasting because that's a smaller range of numbers, basically, that are considered in the normal range. Because after you eat, there is a range depending on what you eat, how long before they took the blood test you ate it. What your normal level. So normal, let's just say after eating though.
Okay, yeah.
Is somewhere between, it could be anywhere between, depending, like 70, 75. This is after eating.
Right.
Right. Fasting, it could be a little bit lower than that.
Okay.
So 70, 75 to sort of like 110, 120 range.
So Melinda's with like 10 times.
No, hers was out of the universe. Forget out of the ballpark. It was
out of the world.
Out of the world. Yeah. Yeah.
So did they say that you had type 1 diabetes right there? Yeah. They did. They knew that.
That's a good question. I was kind of out of it. Let's be honest.
Right.
So I don't know if they said diabetes or type 1 or whatever it was. And at the beginning, and I know this happens to a lot of people, when you first get diabetes, sometimes your pancreas is still has some working quality to it. You're still getting a little bit of insulin. So some people, it's a little bit confusing when they get diagnosed where it's like, well, am I 1 or 2? Because there is still insulin, but over the course of the next, I would say, few months, it completely depleted and my pancreas went, bye, not working anymore. So they assumed it was type 1 because of how high my sugar was and how I was responding to carbohydrates. But it took a few months before all pancreas was
all functioned. So maybe we should pause for a minute and just, Andrea, give us a quick diabetes 101. What is the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes?
Okay. So type 1 diabetes, I mean, this is classical, so there's always exceptions, right? Generally speaking, when you're younger and you come down with diabetes, it's almost not 100%, but it's almost always type 1 diabetes, okay? It's got a very fast onset. I don't know if this happened for you because you had symptoms for a number of months. Sometimes it's preceded by some kind of viral illness. it's generally believed like type 1 is where your body makes antibodies that cross-react with a protein in your pancreas, and it destroys certain cells in the pancreas, not all of them, because there's other enzymes and things that the pancreas makes. And it destroys most of those cells, and then you're left without being able to produce your own insulin. Or produce very, very insufficient insulin.
What does insulin do?
So what insulin does is
everything.
Insulin is a hormone. It does a lot of things. You're right.
Yeah,
so I'm just going to concentrate on the blood sugar thing.
Yes.
So it allows your body to, when you take in something and it gets broken down, and a lot of things are broken down, carbohydrates basically are broken down to their basics or glucose often. And it allows your body to use that glucose to take it up, to store it. It gets converted to other things. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. And then you're also, though, your liver also makes glucose, or it makes also glycogen, which is a way to store the glucose for when you need like fast energy.
Right.
So
if you don't have insulin, then that function doesn't exist, and the blood sugar, the sugar present in your blood is not taken care of, and
and you end up peeing it out basically. Right. That's one thing, and it's also it can cause a lot of damage. Because you're not supposed to have so much sugar floating around in your blood, bathing all your tissues.
Right.
With that, and over time, it can cause a lot of long-term damage. Right. And that's either type 1 or type 2. That doesn't really matter. Type 2 tends to be the kind that people get more, unless they have, like my friend, some acute illness or something, tends to be the kind that people, it's usually a more gradual kind of onset, but it's usually more gradual. It's the one where it's sort of slowly over time, their blood sugars are going up. And then there's also another test, which is actually a lot of times better than your actual blood sugar, which is called glycosylated hemoglobin, or hemoglobin A1C. People will see it. And what's good about that, first of all, you don't have to be fasting or not fasting. It doesn't matter, because it is a measure of the past 3 months, past 2 to 3 months of your blood sugar control.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's like a percentage number. And so that is a much better look at what your real blood sugar is, because especially when you have type 2, not so much maybe type 1, but type 2, where you still have insulin. Okay. So it's just that your cells have become somewhat resistant to the insulin, or your pancreas has gotten tired of producing, and it's not producing quite enough. So that's what's happening with that. And you can, though, especially early, like when you're like pre-diabetes, when you're like borderline, you can actually have a normal especially the fasting one, a normal fasting blood sugar level.
Right.
Or within the normal range. Maybe it's the higher end of normal, but it's like within the normal range. But the glycosylated hemoglobin may not be normal.
Right. Because
it's the average over like a couple of months. So that's a much better way to look at it, generally speaking.
Right. So Melinda, do you test your blood sugar, or I know you have a how do you handle your diabetes?
Yeah.
But we'll talk
have a pump.
Yeah, do you have a pump?
Which is nice.
Yeah.
So I have a pump now. I didn't have a pump until I was pregnant with my son, because I was just so used to always testing my sugar and using needles, and it was just second nature. And I didn't realize the benefits of a pump. But my doctor basically said to me, you have to be on a pump when you're pregnant and just go on it. And I went on something called Omnipod, which is basically, it's like a wire-free pump.
Nice.
And at the time I was like, if I have kids, I don't want them getting into my wires and all these things. So for 10 years I had the Omnipod pump, which was great. Not a lot of complaints. It does like to die on its own and then beep for a really long time. So that was always something really fun to deal with. But with this new Medtronic pump that came out, there's this whole system where it tests your blood sugar for you with the sensor. And I felt like I was ready to graduate to something where I have constant glucose monitoring, so I can always see what my sugar is, whether it's up after a meal, which I leave because if I give myself insulin for that, it's going to drop really fast later on. Like our blood sugar, even for people without diabetes, naturally goes up after you eat.
Right.
Mine just goes up a lot more and stays up if I don't correct it. So I can see all of that on my pump now. It's all monitored. So I still do test a couple times a day because no machines are ever perfect. Wouldn't it be nice one day? Or one day they'll just get rid of diabetes and then it won't be an issue. But in my lifetime, hopefully. But the machine definitely helps with the monitoring and it keeps my sugar steadier, especially at night while I'm sleeping. Because one thing I tell every diabetic who reaches out to me for advice is every diabetic is different.
Right.
The things that affect me don't affect you. I can't eat oats without my sugar going through the roof. And there are other people who could eat oatmeal every morning for breakfast. My sugar goes wacko every night. If my pump's not on for some reason, I know the next day because it goes crazy. Like every diabetic's body just acts and reacts so differently. So when people say, do you have the bad diabetes? I'm like, I don't know. I think all diabetes stinks, but I don't know if I have the bad kind.
Right. So diabetes actually is very common. It's like 1 in 10 people in the United States.
It's actually more. It's more. Yeah.
It's one off.
It's yeah. So I just looked at the latest. This report came out in this year, 2020 from CDC, but it's actually the data is from 2018. So, because there is that. So what they found was overall 10.5% of the population had diabetes. And type 2 is more 10%
common.
of the population of adults, though, 13% have it, right? Because there's a lower percentage in younger people than in older people. The percentage goes up as you get older until those of 65 and older, the percentage is 27%, basically.
Wow.
That's a type 2, right? Both together.
Yeah,
both together.
They
put it together, right?
But,
I mean, as you're the age. So the younger group, right, it's almost all type 1s, right, below the age of 18, right? And as you get older, especially I would get like over the age of 35, the type 2s start coming in more. Although, unfortunately nowadays, the number of age for type 2s is going down. Right. Because the childhood obesity and poor eating, not getting enough exercise. It's not just being obese. It's not just being heavy.
They used to call it adult onset diabetes with type 2. Right. But now they just call it type 1 and type 2 because kids are getting it too. Right. Okay. So let's,
by the way, just to let you know. So they also said, when they look at just from labs and then they find out who knew that they had diabetes. So of those people who, however they got this, who met lab criteria for having diabetes, you ready? Yeah. Of adults, 21% did not know that they had diabetes.
That's a lot.
I mean, that's probably it's mostly type 2s.
Right.
But still...
That's a pretty big number.
Because you don't always know, with type 1, it's definitely more severe in the reaction that your body has to having high sugar. Right. So I find that, and this, again, general statements, but with type 2, you can go your whole life and never know your sugar's high.
Right. Yeah. Because you're still putting out some insulin. More than with somebody with type 1.
Mm-hmm. So you may always feel bad. Like sometimes when my sugar's high, I can feel it. And there are people who just think that's normal, the way they feel. Sometimes you don't know how good you can feel until you no longer feel the way you felt before. So
Well, that's a perfect segue because really, even though diabetes is a lot more common and there's a large percent of the population, we want to just talk about balancing blood sugar in general,
which is important.
Yeah, because it contributes to a lot of the exhaustion, insomnia, anxiety, brain fog, all of these things are impacted by the blood sugar, and there are ways to fix it. So with nutritional management for both type 1 and type 2 is very important, as I'm sure, Melinda, you're very careful about what you eat.
For the most part, I definitely treat myself, and one of the odd benefits of type 1 or having insulin that I could put into my body is that I can eat technically whatever I want. And I only recently learned about a whole massive movement in the diabetes world to eat more carbohydrates, where when I first got diagnosed, it was like, eat as little as you can carb wise, 15 carbs a meal, which I still do because I feel really good when I do that. Uh-huh. But it's no longer like the one way to live with type 1 diabetes. And I don't know a lot about it because I like the way I feel. So I'm not trying to change the way that I feel. And I feel a lot of energy. I'm a very energetic person. So I like it. Like, I don't feel restricted by having an apple with peanut butter. Like, it's delicious. Or once in a while treating myself to something that has more carbs, but I don't feel good when I eat bagels anyways. So I don't really feel the need to eat bagels and pasta because I just don't really feel good after I eat them.
Right.
No matter what.
Right.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that you found your carbohydrate tolerance, like what,
for me, yeah.
Right. For you, what you can eat, and you try and stick to it as much as you can. But you also said, like, if you don't feel good, like if you feel sleepy afterwards, or, then you probably reach your limit and you know that you have to pull back on that. So that's one really good way for people to identify how their blood sugar is balanced. Sure. How much can you eat and how do you feel after you eat? You shouldn't have a ton of energy after you eat. Right. You should just feel good. Yeah.
Go ahead. I mean, the other thing too is looking at, an hour or 2 or 3, like after you eat, how are you feeling? Because like when you asked about hangry.
Yeah.
So, and I said I used to, right? So I used to have probably less protein and a little bit more complex, like carbs in the morning. And I found though, when I ate like that, and still when I eat like that, like I wish I could eat like a bowl of oatmeal normally in the morning. But what happens if I only eat that and I don't eat other stuff with it, if I eat it, let's say 7:30 in the morning, by 10 o'clock, I'm shaky, I'm hypoglycemic, I don't feel good, I feel hungry. So I'm like, okay, this really doesn't work for me.
Right.
Whereas if I eat like something higher protein and some carbs, then I'm fine for the whole morning.
Right. You need, it's good to include the protein every couple of hours, like nuts, seeds, a hard-boiled egg.
I'm a big fan of eating. I think eating is fantastic. Personally, and one of the things that I teach with my health coaching business is eating every 2 to 3 hours.
Yes.
And with happens to be that if you are part of what I do and your interest is losing weight, then I have a very specific plan that we offer. But for people who just want to work on their habits, we teach about eating every 2 to 3 hours and not eating big meals throughout the day, but eating smaller meals, protein, fiber, adding all those things in, getting in your vitamins and probiotics, and drinking a lot of water. I'm literally holding water and it's with me at all times. I've become a water addict. But also being able to have coffee, don't get me wrong. But people who are like, wait, can I do your program and have coffee? I'm like, I wouldn't do it if I couldn't have coffee. But it's, to me, and this is what I love to do. And I know there's a million different ways for people to feel good. Some people like to fast in the mornings and do their thing. I love to eat every 2 to 3 hours. And I don't have big drops in my sugar because of it, because I feel like I'm constantly eating, which is great. And I've learned to have smaller meals and, like you said, more protein. Because it fills me up, but also have carbs. I think carbs are important and they're wonderful. It's just for me how many carbs I choose to intake at any time of day.
Yeah, well, Andrea and I are big fans of eating breakfast.
Yeah. My favorite meal.
Yeah, we feel to start the day, it just calms your system down, and you want to kind of keep your system not in a state of excitement. And actually, I'm going to digress for a minute. There was a study that just came out on intermittent fasting that a doctor did out of Stanford, and he himself did intermittent fasting, and he was excited to prove how it worked. And the study actually proved that people who were doing intermittent fasting lost more lean body mass than people who weren't. So that study just came out last week, and I thought that was and he wanted it to work. This guy was a fan.
People are so happy, and they do feel so good. I have relatives who've done it, and you see they have so much energy and they exercise. But I guess it's not just how you feel. And I think about this with ketosis, because I'm a big fan of ketosis, not ketoacidosis, which is a diabetes enemy. But you're welcome to explain that if anyone wants to.
Go listen to our episode on the keto diet that we did with Keto
we talked about ketosis there.
And we'll explain all of that.
I happen to love the keto lifestyle in a way of I know there's different ways. Like my program can potentially put someone into ketosis if they want, but I just think that I like that you can lose weight. It goes for your fat instead of your muscle.
Right.
So if weight loss is your goal, you're not going to lose your muscle in the process of weight loss, where I guess it's not always easy to know where it's coming from. When you put your feet on a scale, you just see the number drop, but you don't realize where it's coming from. So that's really interesting.
Exactly. Also, just want to go back to the point you both made about eating fiber, fat, protein all together, that the reason it's important to do that for blood sugar is because the glucose is absorbed into the bloodstream a lot slower.
Right.
And doesn't give you those highs and lows that people may experience.
Fiber is our friend.
Yes.
Fiber is what it keeps, like, that's why if I'm eating a fruit, and fruit naturally are very high in sugar, and it's good sugar, but it's still sugar. Like, people will say to me, well, and I'll say, how many carbohydrates does it have? And they'll say, well, it has 4 sugars. I'm like, I'm going to need the whole number because to my body, carbohydrates, even though they go into my body differently, they all affect my body. But when you add fiber on top of it, and I always go back to apples, it's one of my favorite fruits, and berries, which are higher in fiber, my blood sugar doesn't rise as quickly as if I'm having an orange.
Right. Yes, because
really
they do have different absorption rates. And the fiber definitely does help. And I would recommend not eating very starchy foods before bed. And that's it, being the end of the meal, because your blood sugar is just going to crash in the middle of the night. And a lot of times people who are waking up in the middle of the night, it's they're being woken up by their low blood sugar. They don't realize it. But that causes that sudden panic in the middle of the night when you're like up, and that's your body waking you up and saying, hey, I need some blood sugar.
And I got the opposite, by the way. Mine goes up. So and I love snacking and I love late night.
Yeah.
It's always a challenge for me because I could literally eat until the moment I go to bed. But it's my sugar. And I was always taught when I first got diabetes, if I'm going to eat late night, eat protein. Or have something with protein.
Right, protein and carb.
Exactly. So if I do choose to eat later at night, and I really do like it, I'll focus on certain snacks that won't make my blood sugar spike, because just like people are woken up to low, I get woken up from the high.
And we always say to people that if they are getting that panic wake up, that they should have a snack before bed, but just be careful what you're eating.
Right.
And just this is a side tip completely, but if you like them, pistachio nuts, which would be a good bedtime snack, happen to be high in melatonin.
Wow, that's a good tip.
Isn't that a good tip? I got it from my husband, I have to admit.
It's my second favorite nut after macadamias.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so good.
So some of the other things you want to watch out for: any food allergies or any intolerances. Like you were both talking about oatmeal. I can't eat oatmeal because I don't tolerate it well. Even though it's considered gluten-free, it's still a grain. So you want to be aware, because you don't want your body to be in an additional state of inflammation if there are any, problems with the foods that you're eating. So that's something that we should definitely be aware of.
So, I feel like we've sort of wandered all over the place talking about different tips and things like that. Melinda, could you put together what are some of the coaching tips that you use with your clients that you found successful?
100%. So the first thing that I focus on before I even take on any new clients is talking about their goals, because it is very important to me that it's not just about the scale. I think it's really, really important for people to know what they really want, right? What are their ultimate goals? Is it to be able to be stronger? Is it to change some really negative habits, whether it's the way you eat or mindset? Maybe it's to be able to hold your grandchild, or to be able to walk up a flight of stairs without breathing really heavy. So those are things that I won't even take on any new client before we discuss their goals. And weight loss goals are totally fine too. And they're goals that I 100% support. I just want to make sure that the people that I'm working with are in the right mindset as they go into it. So that's number one. And then number two for me is, if you don't take the time, and this goes, by the way, for any program that you go on, I believe if you don't take the time to work on your habits, then any weight that you lose is just going to come back on. Because I think it's very easy. Like, you can give people a list of here's how you eat and you will lose weight. And if you eat that way, you will see the weight loss, because if you're working with someone you trust and they have a great program. But what happens when you stop doing exactly what someone else tells you to do? And you're no longer following that list of things to do. And can you imagine living a whole life just eating what's on a piece of paper, right? Or what's in that email they told you. So I believe it's important to also focus on your habits, making sure you're drinking more, again, understanding what your goals are in the long run. Again, how many times a day you want to be eating, what kind of things that you're eating, and also focusing on growth, personal growth, mental growth, and making sure if there's things, like you said before, if there are things that you don't feel good when you eat, learning that it's okay not to eat them, right? Like cauliflower is really, really healthy. But when I eat cauliflower, I feel awful afterwards. I blow up like a balloon. Why? I don't know. I'm sure there's science behind it and there's something there, but either way, if I eat cauliflower, which I choose to once in a while because it is still delicious, I just don't feel great afterwards. So to me, it's about becoming more aware of your actions, your habits, your surroundings, so that when you reach your goal, you can move on to new goals and keep that going, because we don't ever really stop caring about our health. It'll change along the way and we go through seasons and we have different goals. But to me, it's about always keeping in mind what those goals are, so that no matter where you are, you always have it in mind and don't regress back to what got you to where you started in the first place.
Do you want to talk for a minute about your 5 for Thrive that you're doing right now?
Oh my gosh, I just wrote it on the whiteboard next to me. I have a really big whiteboard and the entire board is taken up with it, because for years I've been following what's called the last 90 days from this woman, Rachel Hollis, who's been a big inspiration in my life. And she talks, motivation, personal growth. And she's the person who made me realize that I could grow. Didn't even know it was an option many, many years ago. So she started this thing called the last 90 days, where you learn to end your year strong instead of waiting till January to start the next year with your goals. So part of that is something she called the 5 to Thrive. And this year they're not doing the challenge, but I'm like, well, I got to still do it. It's been working for years. So I came up with my own version based on hers. And I feel like everybody can do that, like where it doesn't have to be my exact thing, because my goals aren't your goals. But my 5 to Thrive, and I'm actually going to look at them as we go.
Okay.
Number 1 is every single day drinking 10 cups of water. And these are my minimums. Like these are my non-negotiables every single day. So drinking 10 cups of water, my usual is anywhere 8 to 10. So I'm picking it up and going, no matter what, 10 cups of water. I am going to wake up 15 minutes earlier than I plan to. So if I'm like, 8 o'clock is my wake up, I know that's fairly late, then I would wake up 15 minutes before that. So that's number 2. And with that time, number 3 is writing down 5 things that I'm grateful for every day. Small things, just the little things, like a really soft pair of sweatpants, because I believe that those things really keep our head steady when life is just whirling around us, to always find things you're grateful for. And then 10 minutes of personal growth reading, which I was not a reader before. And I was so scared of reading until someone said to me, if you just limit it and every day do a small amount every day, then you can do it every single day. So 10 minutes of personal growth reading. And I've got so many books in my house. I just kind of closed my eyes and picked one this morning, and it was the right one to choose. Thank goodness. And then for me, the next one is going to sleep at a good hour. I had originally said 11:30. I might change that to 12. I kind of want to commit to 12 because I do wake up later. My kids are a little older, so I don't, and right now they're Zooming from home. So I don't necessarily need to be up as early. So to get the whole 6 to 8 hours of sleep situation, I'm making it 12. That I can commit to. I can commit to 12. I wish it was 11:30. I'm just not ready for that. And the last one that I always loved and has changed me in a million ways is eliminating one thing from my diet. And for me this year, it's peanut butter. Because I find my peanut butter is great. It's delicious. It's good for you. If you find the right one, it's not so high in sugar, but I tend to overeat peanut butter and I love it so much. And I was finding myself eating it every single day. And so I was like, you know what? It's 90 days. I once did diet soda. That was the best of them all because I haven't touched diet soda since. I did chocolate once. That was interesting. I did it. I commit. Like when I'm in. But chocolate was one that I was very excited to end. So we'll see how peanut butter goes. But
that's real. Do you have a substitute, or like you having almond butter or sunflower butter? Okay.
I just, you know, if I want almond butter on something, I'll totally go for it.
Yeah.
But I don't see, it's the peanut butter that I love. Like, it just makes me so happy.
Right. Maybe this will help you. Peanuts tend to be a very moldy food. Yeah. And a lot of people who are allergic to peanuts, it's because of the mold that grows in the peanuts. So, you know what? Maybe not having peanut butter, you'll notice some other things that might change or shift. But yeah. I think,
I like it. And creating habits happens over time. And that's the concept also with this being over 90 days or ish, right? Now we're in the maybe 60 days left in the year. I have no idea. But whatever it is, it's the more and more you do something every day, the more comfortable it gets. So at the beginning, it's really, really, really difficult. Really difficult. Like with diet soda, I switched to seltzer. And because I realized that I loved the bubbles. I didn't care if it was soda. So, and it took me time. I hated seltzer at first. And then I found a few brands that I really loved and have, thank God, never looked back. So I do think that over time, when things become habit, it makes life a lot easier when you can just do it every day.
Yeah. And of course, exercise is part of the balancing blood sugar. Right. As we talked about, sleep.
Getting enough sleep.
Getting enough sleep is important for balancing blood sugar too.
And I think another thing which is stress level. And that's easier said than done. But learning ways to deal with stress. Because one thing that probably does increase blood sugar levels, maybe not in type, is cortisol, which is a stress hormone.
Okay, so Melinda, I wanted to thank you. And everybody, you must follow Melinda on Instagram at The Real Melinda Strauss. She is on there every day. She's talking about all these things that are so inspiring. I love seeing what you're reading. I love seeing what you're doing and cooking and your dad when you're with him.
So cute.
So I highly recommend following her at The Real Melinda Strauss. You can also go to Melinda's website, melindastrauss.com, and she has a lot of food posts on there. You can listen to some old episodes of the Kavana podcast, and please like, subscribe, and review so other people can find all our podcasts. And thank you, Melinda.
Thank you. This is fun.
We're going to watch
so much about diabetes today. Great.
And we're going to watch your journey on 5 to Thrive. I'm doing it. I'm going to decide what my 5 to Thrive are too.
Oh, good.
Yes, absolutely.
Share with me. Will you share when you?
Absolutely, I will share. I will post 2, and I'll tag you, and I will share because I've already thought of at least 3 that I want to include. So I am going. I think it's a great idea. People say September is the new January. We have to wait till the holidays are over in order to start doing all that. But I'm definitely, why wait till January to implement some of these new habits and lifestyle changes that are only going to make me feel better. So
got it.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for joining us. It was fun.
Thank you, guys.
And that is it for this episode of Let My People Eat. Please visit our website at letmypeopleeat.com and leave us a comment. Get in touch with our email at podcast@letmypeopleeat.com or call us at 317-659-0004. You can also follow me on Instagram at letmypeopleeat.
We are also on Facebook. Search for Let My People Eat podcast to join the discussion. You can ask questions and suggest topics you'd like us to talk about in future episodes.
If you like this show, please make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes and tell your friends and family to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Let My People Eat is proud to be part of Jewish Coffee House, where you can find your fill of stimulating podcasts dedicated exclusively to Jewish content.
Please remember that while we are certified professionals, this is not a medical advice podcast. No content, posts, or comments should be interpreted as professional guidance. Always speak to your own doctor about making the right life changes for you.
Until next time, I am Jill Scharfman.
And I am Andrea Moskowitz.
Thanks for joining us, and go in good health.